the Book of Job, Suffering and Sovereignty. When everything is taken away, where do we turn? Job's story challenges us to trust in a God who is beyond our understanding. Even in the depths of suffering, God's wisdom and power shine through, calling us to faith in the face of life's deepest mysteries. While the Book of Esther tells a story of deliverance from external threats, the Book of Job delves into the internal struggle of a man facing intense personal suffering. Job's journey is not about political survival or physical rescue. It's about wrestling with profound questions of faith, justice, and the nature of suffering. Job offers a timeless exploration of the human condition, addressing the question that has plagued humanity for centuries. Why do the righteous suffer? Overview. The Book of Job tells the story of a man who, despite his righteousness and faithfulness to God, experiences unimaginable suffering. Job loses his wealth, his children, and his health, all while maintaining his innocence and faith. The narrative follows Job's conversations with his friends, who attempt to explain his suffering through the lens of retribution theology, the belief that suffering is always a result of sin. Job, however, insists on his innocence and questions why God allows such pain to befall him. At the heart of Job's story is the struggle to reconcile faith in a just and loving God with the reality of undeserved suffering. God's eventual response does not offer a clear explanation for Job's suffering, but instead reveals the vastness of God's wisdom and power, calling Job to trust in his sovereignty. The book concludes with Job's restoration, but the deeper questions of suffering remain, challenging readers to trust in God's goodness even when life doesn't make sense. Key events in the Book of Job. 1. Job's loss, a test of faith. The story begins with a description of Job, a wealthy and righteous man who fears God and shuns evil. Job is blameless, and his life is blessed with prosperity, a large family, and good health. However, in a divine counsel, Satan challenges Job's integrity, suggesting that Job only serves God because of the blessings he has received. God allows Satan to test Job's faith, but with the stipulation that Job's life must be spared. In rapid succession, Job loses everything: his livestock, his servants, his children, and finally, his health. He is left sitting in ashes, covered in painful sores. Despite these devastating losses, Job does not curse God. Instead, he mourns deeply but proclaims, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Job 1:21. 2. Conversations with friends, searching for answers. Job's suffering attracts the attention of three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, who come to offer comfort but quickly turn to offering explanations for Job's predicament. According to their worldview, Job's suffering must be the result of hidden sin. They insist that God is just and would not allow such calamity to befall Job unless he had done something wrong. Job, however, refuses to accept this explanation. He maintains his innocence and challenges the simplistic theology of his friends, expressing his deep anguish and confusion. Job's conversations with his friends highlight the tension between traditional religious beliefs about suffering and the reality of Job's experience. Throughout these dialogues, Job cries out to God, longing for an explanation, but is met with silence. 3. God's response, a revelation of sovereignty. After chapters of silence from God, he finally speaks out of a whirlwind, addressing Job's questions with a series of questions of his own. Instead of providing a direct answer to Job's suffering, God reveals his immense power, wisdom, and sovereignty through a stunning tour of creation. God asks Job if he understands the mysteries of the universe, the depths of the sea, or the ways of the animals. God's response is not an explanation, but a revelation of his transcendence. Job, overwhelmed by the magnitude of God's wisdom, humbly acknowledges his limitations and repents for questioning God's justice. The message is clear. While human beings may not understand the reasons for suffering, they are called to trust in God's greater plan, which is beyond their comprehension. 4. Job's restoration, a picture of grace. In the end, God restores Job's fortunes, blessing him with even more than he had before. Job's health is restored, his wealth is doubled, and he is blessed with more children. However, the restoration does not negate the reality of Job's suffering. Job's story does not offer simple answers to the problem of suffering, but it does demonstrate that God is faithful, even in the midst of unimaginable pain. Job's journey from suffering to restoration reminds us that while we may not always understand why we suffer, we can trust in the goodness and sovereignty of God, who is always working in ways beyond our understanding. Esther and Job offer two very different but equally profound reflections on the nature of faith and God's involvement in human affairs. Esther's story reminds us of God's providence and the power of courage and faithfulness in the face of danger. Her rise to queenship and her brave decision to act on behalf of her people illustrate that God can use anyone to accomplish his purposes, even when his hand is not immediately visible. Job, on the other hand, delves into the mystery of suffering, offering no easy answers but challenging readers to trust in God's sovereignty. Job's unwavering faith in the face of profound loss and God's eventual response reveal that while we may not always understand why suffering occurs, we are called to trust in the God who created the universe and holds all things in his hands. Both stories invite us to deeper trust in God's plan, whether in moments of triumph or in seasons of suffering, and remind us that God is always present, even when we cannot see him.